As I've mentioned before, I come from a relatively big family, and because of this, I now have 6 nieces and 3 nephews, which is awesome, but there's something in my family that whenever they have their children, their first children, they always have to be girls, and not only 1, but 2 girls. And at first, my brother Mark and my sister Leah, they both had children, and they were all girls. So I'd go home, and there'd be 4 nieces sitting there, Erica and Maggie and Emily and Lauren, and they'd always want to play like they were princesses. Why? Because every little girl wants to be a princess, and they all dress up in pink and wearing these princess hats, and it kind of drove me nuts because I'm not used to this. I'm a guy, right? Like, I want to break stuff and wear blue, and they want to wear pink and dress me up as a prince. Ain't happening. All right, but this is what happened, and so as a girl, you always want to be a princess as a little girl, but as a guy, right, you don't want to be a prince. As a guy, you don't want to be a prince. No, you want to jump right up there. You want to be a king. You want to be the ruler. There's actually a great movie about this. Maybe you've seen it. It was out a couple years now, maybe 20 years, and it maybe even won an Oscar, probably not for Best Picture, but Best Song. And the movie it's a classic one, The Lion King, right? Have you all seen this movie, I hope? Right? So The Lion King, in this movie, what happens? Well, there's this little prince named Simba, and one of the most famous songs is what? He sings a song, "Oh, I just can't wait to be king." As a matter of fact, I sang this song last year in a play at Epiphany, my old church. It was really embarrassing, so I'm not going to sing it today. All right, but you can imagine these words, right? Oh, I just can't wait to be king. He wants to grow up, and why? So that no one can tell him to do anything. He can do whatever he wants, and he will be the one in charge. That's right, Simba, you would be the one in charge. But unfortunately for Simba, he's not the only one that wanted to be king, was he? No, his uncle wanted to be king as well. Scar wanted to be king and went ahead and actually killed his brother. And so, and he also kicked Simba out of the kingdom. He kicked him out of Pride Lands. That's the name of the kingdom, the Pride Lands. So he kicked him out of there. Said, "Get out of here, go." And so Simba leaves, and Scar takes over this kingdom, right? Now, Scar was very selfish as well. He just wanted to be king. He just wanted to be the one in charge. And so he's in charge, but instead of being a good king, what does Scar do? He only cares about himself and what he can get, how people can serve him, how he can get the best food and whatever. And what happens to the kingdom? It starts to get destroyed. It goes to ruins. Now, meanwhile, Simba's off in some foreign land singing a Kumbaya, whatever it is, right? And someone goes and visits him, and eventually turns to be his queen, Nina, or something like that is her name, and says, "You have to come back. The kingdom is going. It's going bad. There's nothing good happening. We have no food. Simba, you are needed." Simba's like, "No, I don't want to be the king anymore. I'm content." But he gets convinced that he is needed. And so Simba goes back, he battles Scar, and of course he wins. Why? Because it's a Disney movie, so the good guy always wins, right? But what else happens? He wins and he starts to rule this kingdom, not selfishly. Instead, he starts to rule it looking out for the common good of everyone. The movie ends up in a beautiful way, of course. The song Circle of Life is coming on. They now have their own child, and we can see the kingdom is coming back to life. Grass is growing, there's food, everyone is happy. And why? Because now they have a king who is not serving his own wants or his own needs. Rather, he is serving the good of the people. Now, why do I bring this up? Not just to kill homily time, although sometimes that's what I do, all right? Instead, I bring this up because today we are celebrating Christ the King. And we know that Christ the King is the best type of king that we can have. Why? He's even better than Simba. Why? Because he cares about us. He wants the best for us. Christ does not serve himself. We see this. Our King died for us. He did not care about his own interest. Rather, he cared about us so much that he gave his life. In the celebration of Christ the King, what we are called to mind is how great of king we have. That he is the best possible ruler that we can ever have, including over ourselves. We need to let Christ rule over us. And when this happens, when we truly serve Christ as King, what is going to happen? We're going to hear about it in our prayer right before the Eucharist, our preface. It says something beautiful. When this happens, then we are going to have a kingdom of holiness and grace. Then we are going to have a kingdom of justice, love, and peace. When we let Christ serve us, when we let him serve as our king, we will have the happiness that we are looking for. This feast of Christ the King started in 1925. Back then in 1925, it was called the Year of Christ the King. The year 2012, we're celebrating the Year of Faith. But in this Year of Christ the King, Pope Pius XI put out a document called Quas Primas, all right? Christ the King. And he says what? If we, who are princes, by the way, of ourself, or princesses, rulers of ourself, he goes on to say what? If princes and magistrates duly elected are filled with the persuasion that they rule not by their own right, but by the mandate and in the place of the divine king, they will exercise their authority piously and wisely. They will make laws and administer them, having in view the common good and also the human dignity of their subjects. The result will be a stable peace and tranquility, for there will no longer be any cause or discontent. When we let Christ do this, when we serve him alone, we are going to have happiness. So often we look at the church, when we look at these rules and regulations, and we say that they are oppressing us. They're not giving us the freedom that we want. And this is the farthest thing from the truth. When we follow the rules and regulations of the church, when we follow the rule of God, what it is going to give us is what we are truly seeking, which is happiness, which is fulfillment, which is life with God. But in order for this to happen, we need to serve him. Once again, God is not a selfish God. God is selfless. He gives himself to us because he cares about us. And he wants us. He wants you to be with him in his kingdom. So much so that he will do anything for you. He will lay down, and he has laid down his life for us. He is the best possible king that we can have. But it's still our choice. We have the choice. Are we going to be his subjects? Are we going to be his followers? Or are we going to abandon him and think that we know more than he does? Are we going to serve our own wants and our own needs and be king of ourselves? Or are we going to let God rule over us? Today, on this solemnity of Christ the King, let us come before our Heavenly Father and thank him and say, God, be my king and lead me, guide me, and bring me to you so that I may be with you in the kingdom of heaven.